Hello, my name is Shashi Saluna, and I have been teaching women to develop an empowered sexuality for nearly 20 years through Tantra. And the results are just absolutely amazing. I have seen so many women being able to heal from past trauma and other things that have held them back and really connect to their own pleasure and aliveness. And here's something that I'm seeing over and over again, that as women become empowered and discovering their sovereignty and really stepping into themselves, many of them are finding that they don't know how to attract a man anymore, that old dynamics of dating don't quite work, where they were attractive by being slightly disempowered, should we say. So those old relating dynamics don't fit anymore. And many women are concerned that by becoming sort of independent, free-thinking women, that they actually become less attractive to men, that men are maybe intimidated by them, or that men prefer a sweet little subservient puppy dog kind of girl, or that, men kind of get the message that you don't need them because you're an independent woman. So this is a bit of a paradox that many women find themselves in, that they do many years of workshops and self-development, opening themselves up, and then find themselves in a position where dating can cause trouble, that they're not quite sure if they are attractive in this way, and how to relate from this new empowered sexuality. This is a question that myself and many of my colleagues who teach this work have been exploring in depth. Do we need to return to pretend to be how we used to be attractive? Or do we find a new way of relating, a new paradigm of relating? So if you're resonating with this and you're hearing this and you're like, yeah, I've done Goddess Awakening and Shakti Power, this and that, and I've done lots of practices and I feel super empowered, but I feel intimidating to men, then this is for you. Or perhaps you're still in a place where you're acting out of a disempowered dynamic and you go into relationships like that, but you also feel that that isn't serving you, and you actually really want to break that pattern and break falling into victimhood or disempowered or being very passive in relating, and you'd rather be more empowered. And so you're looking for the whole thing. How do I step into my empowerment, and then how do I relate from there? So this is also for you. So let's address that first issue of, can we be attractive as an empowered woman? Who do we attract? How do we relate with men? Many people have heard of models that were popularized by teachers such as David Deida that are teaching that the feminine is to be surrendered, the masculine is to be guiding and present. We also have it in more ancient teachings such as the Tao Tantric Arts, which would have the word yang. We often associate that with masculine, being more directing and guiding. Yin, we associate with feminine, being more surrendering and yielding. So does that mean that as women, we always need to be surrendering and yielding? Do we need men to be stronger than we are? Big questions to be asking. What I have discovered on my journey is that it is super important not to polarize too much within ourselves. So somehow when we're just playing out half of a polarity, then we get caught in a whole load of different relating issues. Let me make a concrete example. If you're in the side of being passive, the side of being submissive, being passive. Now, many women are taught to be this in many different societies. I've worked with so many women who say they put up with sex they're not enjoying because they need to please the man. They don't say no because they shouldn't upset the man. They don't express anger because they don't want to upset the masculine. This kind of attitude is the very old school attitude that was taught to many women of many different cultures. I have taught in Japan, in China, in Eastern Europe, in Western Europe, in America, all over the globe. I have taught workshops, and I find so many variations of this theme. So this is what we might call the old school paradigm, in which you're polarized into really becoming passive and therefore giving up your truth. And what happens over time is a woman actually loses her joy, or she never has any joy in sexuality and intimacy, because she's really giving up her pleasure to please another. And many women go for many years like that. Others eventually start to get a bit angry, feisty, like enough of that. I'm ready to call in my pleasure. So there's different journeys that we can take here. But if a woman does start to wake up and go, that's it, I'm going to start getting empowered and finding my pleasure, then that's often the stage when she starts diving into workshops, discovering practices to reconnect with her body and her pleasure, to be able to own her own pleasure and reawaken all the parts of her anatomy that have frozen and shut down from years of pleasing. So we do a lot of this kind of work in my field with women. I do a 5-week teacher training. We do a lot of self-healing to reclaim our bodies and our pleasure and, just come back into our own power. And the thing is, in that stage, it's quite, as I said, some anger can come up. It's not so much that we're angry with the men that we gave away our power to. That can really be there, especially if it was abusive. But we're also angry with ourselves for not having boundaries, for not speaking our truth. So I think that anger can be very important to come up and to come through. It's an important stage. But if we stay there, if we get stuck in that stage, then at that stage, we can be pushing away men from being able to relate with us, unless they're men who are very passive. Actually, we can attract a polar opposite kind of man. But if we're still yearning for a man to come and claim us and take us, then it's going to be very hard for him if we're still carrying some of that anger, that resentment, some difficulty. So at this stage, I see different things happening with women. Some women will just sort of stay very empowered with a bit of that anger going through and not attract men who are going to claim them. Other women go into the old patterns again and just give up their empowerment, become very passive, are somewhat attractive to men, but then find themselves in old patterns again. And then they're like, some point, what have I done? Where am I? They get angry again. They break up their relationship. They go back to finding themselves. And they're sort of swinging in and out of relating and coming back to themselves. So I don't know if you relate with that, of feeling like you ever lost yourself in a relationship. And that's usually where we stop being able to speak our truth, our boundaries, our consent, owning our own pleasure. We just, bit by bit, we start just wanting to please another, and then before we know it, we've lost ourselves. So these are kind of patterns that can happen for women. And what I've really explored in the last decade with many of my colleagues in this field is that there is a way to get out of those old disempowered victim kind of passive roles that we were playing. They're moving through a healthy anger and reclaiming our power stage and moving on into a place where we can stay in our power and our sovereignty. If you're not used to that word, you may think, what's sovereignty? We use that word to mean, well, the king or queen is a sovereign, that it's actually about your own sovereignty, is like your own truth, is owning your own truth. So that's where we're using this word, is like having a strong sense of your own center. And this actually happens when you have a healthy balance of the yin and yang within yourself. We call that the healthy inner relationship. And when you can manifest both of those within yourself, then you're able to move out of just polarizing, of getting stuck in one role or the other. What you discover then is that it is possible to be situational. So in your own life, you can be fully sovereign and empowered and in charge of your life, an independent woman. And yet when you feel a man can really hold space for you, when you feel that first and you feel like, I can rest into this, then you allow yourself to surrender into that. And this is much healthier, because rather than automatically playing out a kind of surrender because as a man, you are waiting for the dynamic between you to be the one that helps you to surrender, but being open to that. So being willing to let go for a moment of holding yourself, let go for a moment of being in charge of your own life and having your own masculine, holding your own feminine, and relax into that joy of surrender, of being able to surrender. And remember, this is situational. The biggest mistake I see is that we tend to get so all or nothing about it. And then you think, okay, I have to surrender to everything that this man ever does or says. And that's a huge mistake, because it's unlikely that the man you're hanging out with is perfect on every level. And this is a mistake that can really get us into trouble. I see it also with gurus, that you go, oh, this guru's amazing teachings. I'll surrender to him on every level. I'll give him my money, maybe my body. And this is not a good idea. He may not be trustworthy on every level, and neither may the man that you're dating. And that's okay. We're all growing here. What's important is for you as a woman to be able to feel moment to moment when it's safe, when you're safely held and you can surrender, and when to just step back into your sovereignty. So this is a practice that you can learn to move from polarity into sovereignty, in polarity and then back into sovereignty. Having this ability is really life-changing, because this enables you to always stay in your truth. You do not have to give up your truth in order to be in a relationship. You also don't need to make your partner wrong when you're not able to surrender to them. You can simply notice, oh, he's not so present right now. Maybe there's something on his mind or whatever. He's just a human being. He's not so present. And I can just hold space for myself right now because he's not so present. So this is also very helpful, rather than sort of like giving everything over to this man and making your surrender fully his responsibility at all times. So this is the skill that we really need to navigate in order to be able to have both our empowerment and our sovereignty and standing in our truth, and be able to enter beautiful and fulfilling relationships. This is the first step that we really need to learn. I just want to say that as we move into that step, if you've been an independent woman for a while and then you start to surrender, then you can also start to get in touch with a vulnerability inside of you that you aren't always in touch with, shall we say. I like to call it the longing. I like the name The Longing. It's the name that Sufi poets and mystics gave to that calling inside, rather than making it a problem like, oh, you're so needy. However, it can be very difficult for us to deal with, if you fall in love and surrender to a man, suddenly this cascade of longing and needingness can come out of you. So I'm going to share a little bit about that in another video. So find the link that's connected to this one so that you can tune in and watch my next video, in which I will be explaining how we can really learn master the art of self-love through learning how to hold space for that longing that can arise. So I look forward to seeing you there.